exhausting belief. If I could just figure this out, if I could just make them understand, if I could just control how this unfolds, then I'd finally have peace. But here's what the Buddha discovered 25 centuries ago, sitting beneath a tree, watching his own mind create suffering. Peace doesn't come from finally getting what you want. It comes from understanding why you're suffering in the first place. And what he saw was this: you're not suffering because of the difficult person, the unsolved problem, or the situation that went wrong. You're suffering because you're clinging to how you think it should be, instead of accepting what actually is. Every time you try to force someone to be different, you create suffering. Every time you resist a problem instead of working with it, you create suffering. Every time you demand that a situation unfold your way, you create suffering. But the Buddha also discovered something else. You can let go without giving up. You can accept reality without becoming passive. You can release the grip without losing what matters. Tonight, you'll learn 10 teachings that show you exactly how practical wisdom for the moments when your mind won't stop spinning, when your heart won't stop hurting, when you're exhausted from trying to control what refuses to be controlled. Find a comfortable position. If it feels right, share where you're listening from. Let's begin. Watch what happens in your mind right now. Notice how it reaches for something. A memory, a worry, a hope, a person. This reaching, this grasping movement of consciousness is where almost all your suffering begins. The Buddha spent years observing this pattern in his own awareness. He watched how the mind constantly moves toward what it wants and away from what it doesn't want. And he saw something most people never notice. The suffering doesn't come from wanting itself. It comes from the desperate grip that follows. He called this tanha, not desire, not preference, not love, but clinging. The white-knuckled grip on things that are already slipping away. You cling to people, hoping they'll remain exactly as they are today. You hold an image of who they were 6 months ago, a year ago, and you expect that version to still exist. But people are rivers, not statues. They move, shift, change current. When you try to freeze them in place, you're not holding them. You're holding a memory that no longer matches reality. You cling to situations, believing they'll provide the stability you crave. This job will finally bring security. This relationship will finally bring completion. This achievement will finally bring worth. And when these situations inevitably shift, because all situations do, you feel betrayed by life itself. You even cling to your disappointments. You replay the moment things went wrong. You hold on to the hurt as if releasing it would mean the experience didn't matter, as if your suffering proves your love, as if the pain is all you have left of what you lost. This clinging creates an inner war. Reality keeps moving forward, but your mind keeps pulling backward, trying to hold what's already gone. And in that tension between what is and what you wish still was, that's where you break. There was once a young monk who received a gift from a wealthy patron, an alms bowl of extraordinary beauty. It was perfectly crafted, smooth as silk, with a glaze that caught light like water. The monk had never owned anything so fine. He began to cherish it. Each morning, he would polish it until it gleamed. Each evening, he would check it for cracks or chips. He worried when other monks handled it. He kept it separate from the common bowls. His mind, which had been training toward freedom, became occupied with a single object. One afternoon, another monk was washing the bowls after the meal. He picked up the beautiful bowl, admired its craftsmanship, and then, his hands slippery with soap, it slipped. The bowl fell to the stone floor and shattered into dozens of pieces. The young monk heard the crash from across the monastery. He ran to find his beloved bowl destroyed. His face collapsed. Tears came before he could stop them. The other monks stood silent, watching his grief pour out over broken clay. His teacher, an old monk who rarely spoke, came and stood beside the scattered pieces. He looked at his student's face, then at the shards, then back at the young monk. "Tell me," the teacher said quietly, "what broke here today?" The young monk gestured at the floor. "My bowl, the most beautiful thing I've ever owned." The teacher shook his head. The bowl did what all bowls eventually do. Clay returns to clay. What actually broke today was not the bowl. It was your belief that the bowl would last forever. He knelt down and picked up a piece of the shattered glaze. All conditioned things have the nature to break, to fade, to end. This bowl was born with its death already inside it. From the moment the potter shaped the clay, decay began. You knew this intellectually, but you chose to ignore it. You treated the impermanent as if it were permanent. That is where your suffering came from, not from the breaking, but from the pretending. The young monk looked at the pieces scattered across the floor. Something shifted in his understanding. "But teacher," he said, "if everything breaks, fades, ends, how do we love anything? How do we care without clinging?" The old monk smiled. "You love it precisely because it will end. You appreciate its presence today because tomorrow is not guaranteed. This is not coldness. This is seeing clearly." The Buddha taught this understanding with 3 simple words in the ancient language: Sabbe Sankhara Anicca. All conditioned things are impermanent. Everything that has come together will eventually come apart. Everything born carries death within it. Everything that begins is already moving toward its end. This isn't pessimism. It's physics. It's biology. It's the nature of reality itself. The person you love is changing with every breath. Cells die and regenerate. Thoughts arise and dissolve. The personality you fell in love with is not the same personality that exists today, even if the name remains the same. They are a process, not a fixed point. and so are you. Relationships shift because the people within them are always shifting. What felt true between you last year may not feel true today, not because someone failed, but because growth happened. And growth, by definition, means change. Circumstances move because they arise from countless conditions, most of which you cannot see or control. Your job security depends on an economy you didn't create. Your health depends on a body you didn't design. Your relationships depend on another person's inner world, which you will never fully access. Even your own heart transforms. What mattered intensely 5 years ago may barely register today. What you once believed with certainty might now seem naive. Who you were at 20 is a stranger to who you are at 40. This is not failure. This is being alive. But the mind doesn't want this truth. The mind wants permanence, stability, something solid to stand on. So it creates an illusion. It pretends things won't change. It treats the temporary as eternal. And then, when change inevitably arrives, the mind feels shocked, betrayed, devastated, as if life broke a promise it never made. This is the source of so much unnecessary suffering. Not the change itself, but the expectation that change wouldn't happen. People often ask, if everything is impermanent, does that mean nothing matters? If everything ends, why care about anything? The Buddha's answer was the opposite of what you'd expect. Things matter precisely because they're impermanent. The temporary nature of life is what gives each moment its weight, its preciousness, its urgency to be fully present. If you had infinite time with someone, you could always talk to them tomorrow. But when you understand that tomorrow is not guaranteed, this conversation right now becomes irreplaceable. If your body would last forever, you could postpone that walk in the morning light. But when you recognize that your ability to walk is temporary, each step becomes a gift. Impermanence doesn't diminish value. It creates it. The Buddha also taught about how things come into being and pass away, a teaching called dependent origination. It's simple but profound. Everything arises when conditions are right, and everything ceases when conditions change. Nothing exists independently. Everything is the result of countless causes coming together. A flower blooms when soil, water, sunlight, and seed align. When any of these conditions change, the flower fades. This isn't the universe punishing the flower. It's just the natural movement of conditions. A relationship begins when two people's paths cross at the right time, in the right circumstances, with compatible needs and available hearts. When those conditions shift, when needs change, when circumstances evolve, when growth moves people in different directions, the relationship may naturally complete itself. This doesn't mean no one tried hard enough or loved deeply enough. It means conditions changed, and clinging to arrangements that no longer serve anyone creates suffering for everyone involved. When you chase what's naturally moving away, you're fighting against the movement of conditions themselves. It's like trying to hold the outgoing tide in your hands. You can grip as tightly as you want, but the ocean doesn't care about your desperation. It moves according to forces far larger than your will. This is where people misunderstand Buddhist teaching. They think acceptance means giving up, becoming passive, letting life happen to you without responding. But the Buddha taught something more nuanced. You can work with conditions without clinging to outcomes. You can plant seeds without demanding that every seed must grow. You can love someone without insisting they remain exactly as they are today. You can hope for something without collapsing when it doesn't arrive. Letting go is not coldness, it's clarity. When you release your grip on how things should be, you can finally see how things actually are. And from that clear seeing, wise action becomes possible. You stop wasting energy trying to revive what's already ended. You stop forcing conversations with people who've already decided to leave. You stop replaying situations that cannot be changed, searching for a different outcome that doesn't exist. This isn't giving up. It's emotional maturity. It's understanding that your peace matters more than your need to control reality. When you release what's genuinely outside your control, other people's choices, the timing of events, how circumstances unfold, something remarkable happens. Space opens in your chest. Your breath deepens. The constant mental argument with reality finally quiets. You reclaim the energy you'd been pouring into a battle you could never win, and that energy returns to you as peace. The Buddha once said something that sounds simple, but contains everything. Whatever is subject to origination is subject to cessation. Whatever begins, ends. Whatever arises, passes. Whatever comes together, eventually comes apart. This is not a tragedy. This is not a flaw in the design of existence. This is just what is. Your suffering comes from arguing with this truth, from demanding that reality operate differently, from clinging to the fantasy of permanence in a universe where nothing stands still. Peace was available to you all along, not by getting what you wanted, not by making people stay, not by controlling outcomes. It was available the moment you stopped fighting against the nature of things. And here's what the Buddha saw that most people miss. The deepest form of clinging isn't to things or people or situations. It's far more subtle than that. It's the clinging to being seen a certain way, to being validated, to having your worth confirmed by forces outside yourself. That's where we're going next. There's a form of clinging that's harder to see than your attachment to people or outcomes. It hides behind good behavior, behind kindness, behind the desire to be helpful. And because it wears the mask of virtue, you rarely question it. It's the need to be approved of, validated, seen as good. Watch what happens inside you when someone criticizes you. Notice the immediate tightening, the rush to defend, the way your mind scrambles to restore the image that was just challenged. That reaction, that sudden panic at being seen differently than you want to be seen, reveals how much of your peace depends on other people's perceptions. The Buddha identified 8 forces that constantly blow through human life, moving people back and forth like grass in the wind. He called them the 8 worldly winds: praise and blame, fame and disrepute, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. These forces are always present, always shifting. One day you're praised, the next day you're blamed. One day you gain something valuable, the next day you lose it. The winds never stop blowing. Most people spend their entire lives being moved by these winds. When praised, they feel elated, worthy, secure. When blamed, they feel crushed, defensive, diminished. Their inner state becomes completely dependent on which wind is blowing at any given moment. This is exhausting, and it's a particular kind of suffering that you create yourself, not because you're weak, but because you've made your peace conditional on forces you cannot control. When you need validation, you hand other people the power to determine your emotional state. Their words can lift you or destroy you. Their silence creates anxiety. Their attention feels like oxygen. Their approval becomes the measure of your worth. And without realizing it, you begin performing. You adjust your behavior, your words, sometimes even your beliefs, to avoid the pain of disapproval. You lose access to your own truth because someone else's perception feels more important than what you actually think or feel. There's a story about the Buddha that demonstrates this teaching perfectly. One afternoon, as the Buddha sat teaching a small group under a tree, a Brahmin priest approached. This man was furious. He had heard that one of his relatives had joined the Buddha's community, leaving behind the prestigious Brahmin caste to become a wandering monk. To this priest, it was an unforgivable betrayal. He walked directly up to the Buddha and began hurling insults. He called him a fraud, a destroyer of families, a fool, leading other fools. His voice grew louder with each accusation. He used the harshest language he could summon, designed to provoke, to wound, to humiliate. The Buddha sat completely still. His face remained calm. He didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself, didn't show any reaction at all. He simply listened as the man exhausted his anger into the air between them. The other monks shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Others watched their teacher, confused by his silence. Finally, the Brahmin ran out of words. He stood there, breathing hard, waiting for a response, for anger, for something that would justify his aggression. The Buddha looked at him with gentle eyes and asked a simple question. Tell me, if someone offers you a gift and you choose not to accept it, to whom does the gift belong? The Brahmin, caught off guard by the question, answered automatically. It would still belong to the person who tried to give it. The Buddha nodded. Just so. You have offered me anger, insults, harsh words, but I do not accept them. They remain yours. You may keep them. The Brahmin stood frozen. Something in his understanding shifted. He had come to wound the Buddha, to make him feel the pain of disapproval, to shake his composure. But the Buddha's peace was not dependent on being approved of. It wasn't even dependent on being treated with respect. It existed independent of external conditions. That's what freedom from the 8 worldly winds looks like. When praise comes, you receive it without inflating. When blame comes, you consider whether it's true without collapsing. Neither moves you from your center. This doesn't mean you don't care what people think. It means you don't need them to think well of you in order to maintain your peace. There's a profound difference. When you're free from needing approval, criticism becomes information rather than devastation. You can hear feedback without interpreting it as an attack on your fundamental worth. You can consider whether there's truth in what someone says without your entire sense of self collapsing around their words. When you're free from needing approval, praise becomes pleasant, but not necessary. You can enjoy recognition without depending on it, without chasing it, without structuring your entire life around obtaining it. But when your happiness depends on approval, you create an inherently unstable life. Because people are inconsistent. Their moods change. Their opinions shift. Their loyalty wavers. Their attention moves elsewhere. They praise you today and forget you tomorrow. They criticize you in one moment and appreciate you in the next. The Buddha understood this instability deeply. He watched how people are swayed by countless factors: their own pain, their conditioning, their current circumstances, their unmet needs. Their perception of you has more to do with what's happening inside them than with who you actually are. So when you tie your inner stability to their approval, you're building your house on sand that shifts with every tide. You live in constant turbulence, rising and falling with each change in the wind. This need for validation hides in the most innocent places. It hides in your desire to be helpful. Am I doing enough? It hides in your kindness. Do they see how much I care? It hides in your work. Do they appreciate my effort? It hides in your relationships. Do they value me the way I value them? There's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to be appreciated, respected, valued. These are natural human desires. The problem arises when your peace becomes conditional on receiving these things. Then you begin to contort yourself. You say yes when you mean no because you fear disapproval. You hide parts of yourself that might not be well received. You perform a version of yourself that you think others will accept, and in the process, you lose touch with who you actually are. You become so focused on managing other people's perceptions that you forget to check in with your own truth. You stop asking, is this what I actually think? Is this what I genuinely want? Does this align with my values? Instead, you only ask, Will this make them approve of me? This is how you abandon yourself while believing you're maintaining connection. The Buddha taught a form of mental stability called equanimity. The word in the ancient language is upekkha, a balanced, spacious awareness that remains steady regardless of what's happening around you. Equanimity doesn't mean you don't feel anything. It means you feel without being controlled by the feeling. You notice praise without needing more of it. You notice blame without being destroyed by it. Think of a mountain. Weather moves across its surface. Storms, sunshine, wind, snow. The mountain doesn't resist the weather or chase after it. It remains stable beneath all conditions. This is what your mind can become when it's no longer blown by the 8 worldly winds. Not rigid, not cold, not indifferent, but stable, responsive, without being reactive, present without being dependent. Monks and nuns train in this quality for years. They practice receiving both praise and criticism with the same balanced awareness. When someone honors them, they bow and continue their practice. When someone insults them, they bow and continue their practice. Neither moves them from their center, because their center is not built on external validation. It's built on something deeper, on their commitment to truth, on their practice of awareness, on their understanding of what actually creates peace. You can develop this same stability, not by becoming a monk, but by noticing when you're being moved by the winds. Notice when praise makes you feel inflated, suddenly more worthy, suddenly more confident. Notice when criticism makes you feel deflated, less worthy, less sure of yourself. Both movements reveal the same thing. Your sense of worth is being determined by forces outside you. The practice is simple, but not easy. When praised, receive it graciously, but don't grasp it. Don't replay it in your mind, searching for more evidence of your worth. Just let it be what it is, someone's opinion in this moment. When criticized, consider whether there's truth in it, without interpreting it as a verdict on your entire existence. If it's accurate, learn from it. If it's not, let it pass, like clouds moving across the sky. The Buddha once said something that sounds almost impossible until you experience it yourself. He said that a wise person is like a solid rock, not shaken by storms, not moved by winds, completely stable, regardless of external conditions. This doesn't mean becoming hard or closed. Rock, in this metaphor, represents something that has found its own ground, its own foundation, that doesn't need anything external to remain stable. When you're no longer moved by praise or blame, something remarkable happens in your relationships. You stop performing. You stop adjusting yourself to maintain approval. You stop hiding the parts of yourself that might be rejected. You become honest, not harsh, not careless, but truthful. You say what you actually think because you're no longer terrified of disapproval. You make decisions based on what feels right to you, not what looks acceptable to others. And here's what's surprising. This honesty often strengthens relationships rather than damaging them, because people can sense when you're being real versus when you're performing. And real connection only happens between people who are willing to be seen as they actually are. The people who genuinely care about you will respect your truth, even when it's different from what they expected. The people who only valued you for your compliance, your agreeableness, your willingness to be what they needed, those relationships will naturally shift or end. And that shift, though sometimes painful, is actually a form of freedom. You're no longer carrying relationships built on pretense. You're no longer exhausting yourself trying to maintain an image that was never truly you. Your emotional life becomes simpler. You're no longer riding the roller coaster of other people's changing opinions. You're no longer devastated by criticism or inflated by praise. You exist on steadier ground. This is what the Buddha meant by freedom from suffering. Not that nothing difficult ever happens, but that your peace is no longer held hostage by external conditions. The winds keep blowing, they always will, but you're no longer grass bending with every breeze. You've found your own rootedness. Freedom from approval opens a door. Walking through it takes practice. What the Buddha taught next goes deeper. It's about how you relate to your own mind, your own emotions, your own suffering. Most people believe letting go happens the way healing happens after an injury. You simply wait, and time does the work. You wake up one morning and the pain is gone. The grip has loosened. The person or situation no longer occupies every thought. But that's not how it works. Time alone doesn't heal anything. Time just passes. What heals is what you do with the time. The choices you make again and again, moment by moment, when your mind tries to return to what you're attempting to release. Letting go is not passive. It's one of the most active things you'll ever do. It's a discipline, a cultivation, a practice you engage with daily, sometimes moment by moment, when the pull is strong. You don't simply decide once to let go, and then it's done. You decide again when you wake up, and the first thought is of them. You decide again when something reminds you of what you lost. You decide again when your mind offers to replay the entire story one more time. Each time you choose release over rumination, you strengthen something inside you. Each time you gently redirect your attention away from the closed door and toward what's actually in front of you, you're training your mind in a new pattern. The Buddha understood this deeply. He knew that insight alone isn't enough. You can understand intellectually that clinging creates suffering and still find yourself clinging. Understanding points the direction, but practice is what carries you there. He taught this through a parable that's simple on the surface, but contains layers of wisdom. One day, the Buddha was teaching a group of monks about the purpose of his teachings. Some of them had become attached to the teachings themselves, memorizing them, debating their precise meanings, holding on to them as if the words themselves were liberation. The Buddha said, "Suppose a man needs to cross a large river. The near shore is dangerous and frightening. The far shore is safe and peaceful. But there is no bridge, no ferry, no easy way across. So the man gathers reeds and branches and vines. He binds them together into a raft. He climbs onto this raft and, using his hands and feet, paddles to the other shore. He crosses successfully. He reaches safety." Now, the Buddha asked, what should this man do with the raft? Should he think to himself, "This raft has been very useful to me. It carried me to safety. I should honor it by carrying it on my back wherever I go from now on?" The monks smiled. The answer was obvious. "No," they said. "He should leave the raft on the shore. It served its purpose. Carrying it further would be a burden." The Buddha nodded. "Just so. Even these teachings are like a raft, to be used for crossing over, not to be held onto. When you've crossed to the far shore, you leave even the Dharma behind. How much more should you leave behind what never served you in the first place?" This parable cuts through a fundamental misunderstanding. If even the Buddha's teachings, which lead to liberation, which end suffering, which point toward truth, are meant to be released once they've served their purpose, then holding on to what actively harms you makes no sense at all. The relationship that ended was a raft that got you somewhere. It taught you something, showed you something about yourself, brought you to a new shore. But now it's over. Carrying it forward, replaying it, analyzing it, wishing it were different, is like dragging the raft on your back while trying to walk inland. The disappointment you experienced, the plan that fell apart, the person who hurt you, these were all part of crossing a particular stretch of river. They happened. They're part of your history. They shaped you in some way, but they're not meant to be carried indefinitely. The Buddha taught that everything has its time, and then it's time to be released. This doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending something didn't matter. It means recognizing when you've extracted whatever learning or growth was available, and then consciously choosing not to keep reliving it. But here's why this is so difficult. Your mind doesn't want to let go. Not because it's trying to hurt you, but because it's trying to protect you through a deeply flawed strategy. Your mind holds on to familiar pain because the unfamiliar feels dangerous. At least with this pain, you know what to expect. You know how it feels. You know how to function around it. You've built your life with this pain as a constant. Letting it go means stepping into unknown territory, and the mind interprets unknown as threatening. Your mind holds on to memories because they keep the past alive, and sometimes the past feels safer than the present. If you can keep replaying how things used to be, you don't have to fully face how things are now. The memory becomes a refuge from reality. Your mind holds on to people, even after they've left, because losing them feels like losing part of yourself. If you defined yourself through that relationship, if your sense of worth was tied to their presence, then letting them go means not knowing who you are without them. And that unknown identity feels more frightening than the pain of holding on. In Buddhist teaching, this is called avijja, ignorance, but not in the sense of lacking information. It's more like a fundamental misperception, a not seeing clearly. The mind doesn't see things as they actually are. It sees them through filters of fear, desire, past conditioning, future anxiety. It mistakes the impermanent for permanent, believing that if you hold tight enough, things won't change. It mistakes suffering for comfort, because familiar suffering feels less threatening than unfamiliar peace. It mistakes the changing nature of identity for a fixed self, believing you are the person you were, in that relationship, in that job, in that version of your life, rather than recognizing you're always becoming someone new. This ignorance isn't your fault. It's the default setting of an unexamined mind. The mind evolved to keep you alive, not to keep you peaceful. So it clings to what's familiar, even when what's familiar is painful. But you can train the mind differently, not by forcing it, not by hating it for its patterns, but through patient, repeated practice. The Buddha called this bhavana, cultivation, development, the gradual strengthening of wholesome qualities through regular practice. Think of it like training a muscle. The first time you try to lift something heavy, you might not be able to do it. But if you practice regularly, gradually, the muscle strengthens. Eventually, what once felt impossible becomes natural. Letting go works the same way. The first time you notice your mind returning to someone who's gone, it might take everything in you to redirect your attention. The pull might be overwhelming, but you do it anyway, gently, without judgment, just noticing and redirecting. The 100th time, it's slightly easier. The 500th time, there's less resistance. Eventually, the mind stops returning as often because the neural pathway you're creating, the one that leads away from rumination and toward presence, becomes stronger than the old pathway. This is the practice of letting go, not a single dramatic release, but 1,000 small redirections. When you practice letting go, you're releasing the emotional grip, not the memory itself. The memory can remain without you being imprisoned by it. You're releasing the demand that reality should have been different, not the awareness that it was difficult. You begin to recognize that holding on doesn't protect you. It doesn't keep you connected to what you've lost. It doesn't honor what mattered. It just prolongs the suffering. You begin to accept that life moves in cycles. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Relationships begin, and sometimes they complete. Circumstances arise, and eventually they change. Even your own identity is not fixed. Who you are evolves continuously. Resisting this natural flow is what creates the suffering. Not the change itself, but your resistance to it. The practice becomes very specific. When someone says something hurtful, you learn not to internalize it immediately. You create a small gap between their words and your reaction. In that gap, you ask, is this about me, or is this about them? Is this truth I need to hear, or is this their own pain speaking? You learn to let words pass through without letting them define you. When circumstances shift unexpectedly, you learn not to fall apart. You feel the disappointment, acknowledge the difficulty, and then you ask, what can I do from here? What's actually within my influence? You stop wasting energy fighting what's already happened and redirect that energy toward what's possible now. When relationships fade, you learn not to chase. You recognize when someone is moving in a different direction. You honor what was shared. Without demanding it, continue beyond its natural completion. You let people walk their own path, even when that path leads away from you. You begin to understand that not everything requires a reaction. Not everything needs closure in the way you once thought it did. Not everything is worth fighting to keep. Some things are meant to pass through your life, to teach you something, to shape you in some way, and then to leave. The practice is learning to honor the passage without clinging to the presence. The Buddha once said something beautifully simple. Letting go gives us freedom, and freedom is the only condition for happiness. Not achievement, not approval, not getting what you want. Freedom. The freedom that comes from no longer being controlled by your attachments, your fears, your need for things to be different than they are. This freedom doesn't arrive all at once. It grows gradually through practice, through the daily choice to release rather than grasp, to accept rather than resist, to trust the process rather than control the outcome. And as this practice deepens, something shifts in how you experience life. You still feel everything: joy, sadness, love, loss, but you're no longer imprisoned by what you feel. You can experience life fully without being destroyed by its changes. The practice of letting go cultivates emotional independence. Not isolation, not detachment from care, but independence from the need for life to be other than it is. What the Buddha saw goes even deeper than learning to let go. He saw something about the nature of control itself, about what you can actually influence and what you've been exhausting yourself trying to manage. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to manage what was never yours to manage. You wake up with chronic pain and spend the day fighting your body, angry that it won't cooperate, resentful that this is your reality. You watch a friend make a choice you know will hurt them, and you exhaust yourself trying to convince them otherwise, as if your clarity should override their agency. You get criticism at work and lie awake replaying the conversation, searching for what you should have said to make them see you differently. You're trying to change your body's response to stress. You're trying to alter another adult's decision-making. You're trying to rewrite someone's perception of you after the fact. And underneath all of this is a belief so deep you might not even recognize it. The belief that reality should bend to your preferences, that the world should rearrange itself according to your understanding of how things ought to be. But reality doesn't work that way. It unfolds according to causes and conditions, most of which you cannot see and will never control. Your body responds to decades of patterns, genetics, environmental factors, stress levels accumulated over years. Your friend makes choices based on their history, their fears, their needs, their understanding, none of which you can override with logic. Your colleague's perception of you is filtered through their own experiences, insecurities, expectations, things that existed long before you entered the picture. The Buddha pointed to something radical. Most of your suffering doesn't come from these realities themselves. It comes from your refusal to accept them. He taught this through an image that's been repeated for 25 centuries because it's so precisely accurate. Imagine you're walking through the forest and an arrow strikes you. Maybe it was shot by a hunter who mistook you for an animal. Maybe it fell from somewhere above. It doesn't matter how it happened. It's there, embedded in your shoulder, and it hurts. This is the first arrow. This is the pain that life delivers simply because you're alive and vulnerable. Your body develops an illness. Someone you trust